Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to waste anybody's time here. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. It has been 2 months, more than 2 months since I've recorded a podcast episode, but I have a reasonable explanation, okay, guys? Listen. First of all, welcome to 2025. I know I'm a bit late to the party. It's like, what day is it today? Today is Tuesday, so it is 21st. 3 weeks into the new year, but regardless, Happy New Year. I feel like you can say Happy New Year until like the middle of February, personally, because it's not like you see people all the time to be wishing them Happy New Year. I digress. Anyways, welcome to 2025, guys. And before I even get into this episode, I want to say welcome to the Black Sheep podcast. My name is Keziah, your host, you already know. And I actually want to extend a thank you as well as an apology, Obviously, I started this podcast back in August. I was really nervous about it. It was a passion project that I've had for years. You guys already know the la-di-da, the backstory. But I just want to say thank you for everyone who listened to my podcast, whether you viewed it on Spotify or on YouTube, or whether you listened through Apple Music or even through regular Spotify as well. I just want to extend my gratitude because slowly but surely we're creating our little family here, and people are relating to what I say and people are learning from what I say, and it's really empowering, and it feels really nice to know that my voice is actually going somewhere, not just bouncing off the walls of my room. So it's really comforting. But I feel like what I'm going to speak about today is quite contrary to what I'm thanking you guys for, because I think with having this repertoire of someone who teaches and someone who expresses themselves in a way for people to relate and be inspired by, it's kind of changed the trajectory for how I want to do this podcast, because it has started to turn into something that I am not. Or rather, me being the face of this podcast has turned into something that I don't want. Not anymore. I mean, it started with something that I wanted, but let me get into it without being all, cryptic. So, I usually read off my notes, right? Well, not read off my notes, not me exposing myself, but in an incorrect way. When I say I read off my notes, I mean that I look at my notes for inspiration, and sometimes I do plan out episodes because, like I've said multiple times on here, it is so difficult to come up with a proper, objectively correct statement, take it through an entire hour, and give anecdotes, examples, lessons, and round it up. It's very difficult to do on my own. So I do naturally type things out. But today I'm just going to come at you. I'm going to come at you naturally. I'm going to come at you with nothing but just my brain. There's no spare phone. There's no journal. Just my brain and vibes. And it's inspired by something that I wrote in December, where I was feeling super burnt out by this podcast. And I never thought I'd get to this point, to be burnt out by a passion project. But I think what my problem was calling it a passion project in the first place, because I feel like passion, purpose, those two things, they carry a lot of responsibility, because passion means to me an escape from what is your regular, an escape from the binary, and with that comes this almost like this yearning to make it so successful that you never have to stick to the norm again, that you never have to abide to the status quo again. And so a lot rides on that passion, that if it's not perfect, then it is not worth doing. And would you not agree that that defeats the purpose of doing something purely for being passionate about it? Because I think I conflated something that I'm passionate about and something that I should be enjoying. And I was not doing the two. I was not. I was prepping my podcast, I'd edit and promote, and after that, I then only have a couple of days before I have to think of another perfectly curated topic to speak about, and do the whole cycle again and again and again. And the podcasts were becoming less and less frequent until I got to exam season around early December, and I was just like, it's enough. It's enough. I dropped the mic, I put it back in the box, I put it under my bed, and it's been collecting dust ever since, and I've not touched it since. And until maybe a few weeks ago, I had no desire to pick it up again. What happens when you grow up with a standard placed upon you that you are meticulous in everything that you do? You accidentally leak that into every other part of your life that doesn't necessarily require that perfection. I look at school and how much I worked hard, so hard to get certain grades. Nobody talks about those grades anymore. Nobody talks about my junior cert anymore. But the amount of time and effort that I put into slaving away to study for that exam was because doing things to the point of burnout was all that I knew. and it leaked into my undergrad as well, doing things under pressure with the aim of perfection. And the existential dread of not achieving that perfection was all that I knew. And from the undergrad, it leaked into my master's. And so my master's, the first semester, was an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I don't speak about it much. If you guys don't know, I think this is the first time I've ever spoken about my education on here. I did my undergrad in biomedical sciences. So I'm a STEM girly through and through. Whether or not that's my passion, that's a story for another day. But I'm also doing my master's in a biology-based field, but I'm in the tech side of it, so I do a lot of coding. It's again like doing something that's foreign to me, but still wanting that perfection to the point of when I don't get it right the first try, what's the point? And I'll either burn out, or I'll just give up, or I'll just look for something else to fuel that fire. And I think as well, in school, I think all of us are told that we're all supposed to have some sort of dream that we look for. You know, they always say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the standard was always to give one answer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a builder. I want to be a bin man. I want to be a hairdresser. It doesn't matter what answer you give, but it's usually only one. And so in my head, I'm thinking the only thing that makes sense for me to do right now is find one thing that I'm absolutely perfect at and stick to it for the rest of my life. It didn't work when I tried to get into medicine. It didn't work when I did my undergrad and decided I was going to go into tech. And now I've decided that I want to do a podcast, and I've deluded myself into thinking that because I can only be one thing, this one thing is now what my future rides on. And that's a big responsibility to have. Like I said, when things don't work out perfectly, I start to delude myself into thinking that it is not my purpose, or that is something that I am not meant to do with my life, because surely if it's something I'm meant to do with my life, I would find this so easy. I would breeze through it the way some people breeze through their degrees and breeze through their jobs and breeze through social media and breeze through their artistry. But I don't know what goes on behind closed doors when people succeed in those things. Hard shit is going to happen. Things are not going to be perfect, no matter how purposeful you feel in the field that you've placed yourself in. It's not always going to work out like from A to Z in a linear pattern. There's ebbs and there's flows. And I've said that on this podcast before, so it's bizarre to think that I don't take my own advice, but I feel like a lot of us need to understand that we are not perfect, especially educators or podcasters or anyone who lies in the field of inspirational talk. I think there's this notion that we have to have everything figured out, and I put that notion upon myself, I guess. And I sort of like criticize myself for, not being able to come up with a valid point to talk about in my podcast and blah, 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 blah. And so that passion for it started to dwindle away. The fact that editing was so hard and so long and so time consuming, what once was a therapeutic activity now became a chore that I did not want to do. And here we are 2 months later, no videos posted, no scripts written, podcast mic collecting dust, but it's okay. We're back. We are back, and I'm gonna explain to you guys where the switch happened, because it was sometime near the end of the year. I was thinking to myself, listen, I don't want to be one of those people that start something and quit something, because I've been that my whole life. I've acknowledged it. What I've just said for the last 10 or so minutes, I've acknowledged it in my own life. When I'm not perfect at something, I feel really, really like, I don't know what it is. It's like this dread that I'm just, okay, I guess I'm just never meant to do this. And so I'll back away. And I didn't want to be that with this podcast, because I was like, this podcast was supposed to be my escape from that. And so I said, okay, let me get back into scripting. Let me try and plan some episodes. But before that, maybe I need to do a rebrand of my podcast, because I said it in my last episode before I kind of disappeared off the face of the earth, that I didn't want to be labeled as a self-help podcast, because that's not really what this is and not what I really wanted it to be. But the question was also, okay, I don't want it to be a self-help podcast, but all I do is end up accidentally giving anecdotal advice, which is in line with a self-help podcast. So what the hell are you, And that question is what kept me off for a really long time. And I said, let me just brainstorm. Let me just start writing, figure out what it is I like, what it is that I don't like, and eventually I'll figure out my niche, because everyone says on TikTok, everyone says online, In order to be successful online, no matter what medium you speak through, you need to have a niche, because otherwise people aren't going to want to talk to you. People aren't going to come back for you if you're not providing them with some sort of product, if you're not marketing yourself towards them, if you're not a product for them, you know? But I feel like now that I look at that, it's a bit dystopian, isn't it? To think that we're just selling ourselves to people. Like, not on some weird shit, but I don't know if I agree with that. I'll even go through it on my laptop. Like, I know I said I didn't bring notes, and I didn't. This is literally what I wrote. What day? 26th of December, right after Christmas. I'd lift it up, but it's on my laptop. So I was basically speaking about how I have this fear that I'm going to run out of things to say eventually. Because, you know, I try to come up with a podcast episode every so and so 2 weeks, I guess. But I acknowledge to myself, like, let's be for real, guys. I know I don't speak that much about my life because I only have, like 5 or 6 episodes out. But guys, I don't have that many stories to say. Like, I started comparing myself to other podcasts, thinking about all the anecdotes that they have, all of the funny, crazy dating stories that they've had, the crazy places that they've been, the things that they've thought, said, smoked, drank. I have had a very, for want of a better word, I've had quite a mundane life. I spent most of my teen years in my room. During the pandemic, that was even worse. That was further aggravated. I spent my entire life on Discord, talking to my friends. Like, I didn't do much. I didn't have much of a social life because I either spent my time studying or I just wasn't allowed out or I didn't have people to go with. So then I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, am I going to run out of things to say? Am I going to run out of lessons to give people? Am I going to run out of things to provide to the community? Guys, must I have something insightful to say every single day? Because, like, okay, let's take it this way. When I started my podcast, what did I call it? I said that I wanted this to be like having a friend in the room. When you have a friend over, right? Now, you guys tell me, because this doesn't happen to me often. But when it does, and I have a friend in my company, are you guys talking for the entire duration of that time? And if you are talking, what are you talking about? Is it going to be the social and political state of the world right now? Like Jaden Smith? Like, it's never that. You guys are talking about brain rot. You're talking about TikTok trends. You're talking about the news. I mean, I guess we are talking about the political climate because Trump is back. A lot has changed since I posted my last podcast episode, but I digress. On the moments that we're not talking, if you are a good friend, and if you're someone who I just want to be in your presence for the sake of you as a person, 90% of that time is going to be spent silent, sitting in comfortable silence. And am I going to look at you and think, wow, this bitch is so boring. I want nothing to do with her. She's not bringing anything to the table. She's not even saying anything substantial. I'm leaving here with no advice from her or anything. What's the point? You'd feel like it's a bit of a transactional friendship, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? I want this to be a friendship. I want this podcast to be filled with people, a community that are here for each other. And being here for someone doesn't always mean that you need to bring some sort of life-changing existential advice to the table every single time. And if you move in a friendship or in a relationship or any sort of companionship with the purpose of just provide at the highest quality, it's never going to happen every time that you try. And that's what's happened here with my podcast. It got to a point where I was running out of insightful thought processes, or rather, I had them written down and I'd look at them and my soul is just not, it's saying nothing. I feel nothing towards these words on paper. So how am I supposed to relay that in a tone that invites you to grasp what I'm saying? It's not going to work. 90% of the podcasts that I listen to and enjoy are chatting about absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Listen, there's the David Goggins, all these Andrew Tate people that come up with like super inspirational quotes every single episode, but remember, they're screenshotting them off Twitter, incel Twitter, mind you, and 90% of the time it's complete and utter BS. And you know why people eat it up? Because they're there for them, not just the words that are coming out of their mouth. They are there for the essence of that person and how they present themselves. I am more than what I bring to the table. It's ironic, and it kind of backtracks from what I said in the first few episodes about, like, if you know what you bring to the table's never going to shake. Bringing things to the table is not just about tangible items. It's also not just about verbal content. It's sometimes just being that safe space. Sometimes podcasts act as white noise for me. If I am your white noise and you're not hearing a single word that I'm saying, I don't care. I don't care. As long as you feel comfortable here. If one person can listen to my podcast and feel at peace, I'm doing my job. And not to mention, at my small age, I'm talking about, I haven't experienced. I'm 21. Even if I had the most extravagant, crazy teenage years, that's still not a lot of time to be coming up with these gems of wisdom that will take you through the rest of your days. And as much as, yes, I'd like to give myself credit for the fact that I can be someone who my friends look to for advice, and I am somebody that people look to for advice. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that aspects of this podcast give a self-help kind of vibe, but I don't want to put myself in a box. I don't want to just be one thing, because every time I make myself one thing, and that one thing doesn't work out in the way that I want that one thing to work, then I no longer desire to be that one thing. I know I've said one thing so many times, but I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. Me being a podcast host, my job is to be that comfort for you guys. My job is to be a comfort creator. I saw this term on TikTok a few weeks ago and I just love it so much. Not just content creator, comfort creator. And now when I look at TikToks and I look at who I'm following, I can kind of categorize who I follow because of a product and what they are providing for me. And then I can also decipher who I'm watching just for the sake of the person being who they are. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I'm clocked in every morning, checking out what they're up to. And that is what I would like to be starting from this first episode of the year. I hope you guys are excited as I am, because honestly, when I typed everything out on my laptop, I just felt reborn. I was like, this is what I was missing. I don't want to be one thing. I don't want to be so meticulous and performative. Sometimes I would block out certain evenings just to record. I'll be like, okay guys, I'm gonna record. Don't talk to me for this many hours. No. I literally got home from uni. I'm there doom scrolling on TikTok. I'm like, I feel so tired. I don't want to type. I don't want to code. I don't want to read. I don't want to do nothing. But something is calling me to speak on this mic. And so I put my mic up. I put my lip gloss back on. And I plugged it into my computer. And here we are. If you heard me burp, mind your business. I'm just a girl. Technically, we actually don't burp scientifically. You can believe me, I have degrees. Well, soon to be 2. I have a degree, okay? Women don't burp. It's a known fact, but anyways, like I was saying, if my job is to come here and be a comfort creator to you guys, if I'm not coming on here every day, enjoying what I do, then it takes the comfort out of comfort creator, because you will tell eventually, if I continued doing the podcast disingenuously, you would have sensed the discomfort, because I'm someone who, if you know me in person, I move with my heart. I'm very spiritually led, and so if my heart is not in something, you will know. If my spirit doesn't tell you, my face will. And so you will just see the light leaving my eyes every single episode. And I didn't want to go out like a fizzling candle, I wanted to take a minute, figure out what the hell I was doing and why I was here, and come back on with a purpose and a passion and a mission. And I think my mission is very, very clear now. Also, this is why even after I wrote this on the 22nd of December, I didn't get up and start recording straight away, because I feel like sometimes after writing something down, especially when it's so heartfelt and it's something that means a lot to you, you do still need time to dwell on your words before you articulate them externally. And I think with that, your thoughts can mature and evolve, like how you get a perfume and you spray it for the first time and you're like, oh, I like the smell, this is giving. But then as the day goes on and the smell matures and macerates, you get different notes and you get different flavors, and you see the developments of that smell, and you're like, oh, this is what this is really all about. This is what this was trying to tell me. And I feel as though, with this podcast, right, the aim was just to find my niche and then find out ways to diversify and make it my own, which, makes sense. But now I'm realizing that I don't really want to have a niche. I don't think I have one. And I started actually on my TikTok, because even though I've been inactive on here, I had started reposting on TikTok, and I've been doing all sorts. I've been doing nails, hair, makeup, outfits, still think pieces here and there, but just weaving it into things that I actually like to do, and not just screen recording my podcast snippets and just throwing them on and hoping for the best, because that's all well and good, but I still want to build an audience, and sometimes it's hard to do just on Spotify. Sometimes if people are seeing me on a platform like TikTok, which got banned for like 12 hours, is that not crazy? It got banned in America, not here. Us Irish people, we're good. We're alright. The Europeans are up. I don't know about Mr. Trump's land, but yeah, something fishy is going on, but what do I know? Maybe when I know more, I'll talk about it later. But for now, basically, I'm saying that I don't really have a niche anymore. I've been doing vlogs and I love it. I love making silly little videos, and I actually do plan to incorporate that here on Spotify and on YouTube. Mostly on YouTube because I don't know how it'll fare on Spotify to make vlog style videos, especially for people who listen to podcasts for the sake of listening and not watching, because sometimes you put it on just for background noise, but if I'm doing things in the background and you can't see it, it's like, well, doesn't that defeat the purpose? So I guess let me know if that's something that you want to see. Again, pre the growth, because in episode 2 I was saying, if you're asking your audience what you want them to see, it means you don't care about your and you don't care about yourself. No, two things can be true at the same time. You can be very confident in your content, or you can be confident in your plans for your content, but you still want it to be audience led for some part. You know, you don't want to fall into a box where they control you, of course, but let me know if that's something you want to see here on Spotify. But I will definitely be trying it on YouTube. Like, I mean, this setting here, but doing my makeup or doing my nails or something. You may not see the details. I might put the details on TikTok or something like that. But just if I'm doing something in the background that I enjoy, sometimes I find my brain moves at a faster pace in terms of my creativity. And I don't know, I could accidentally drop some gems. I was about to be all millennial and be like, drop some gems on here and on my nails, period. I'm too young to be acting like this. I'm too young to be speaking like this. Moving on. Thank you. Most importantly, I think when we look at, and this should be a message for yourself as well, when you're looking at things that you do in your life that are taxing, like emotionally taxing, that can be something as mundane as your 9 to 5, or something as out there as doing a podcast or whatever it is that you deem outside of the status quo that you grew up in. Burnout is inevitable. Let's just put it out there. Burnout is inevitable. I think a lot of people online demonize burnout as the be all end all, that this is the beginning of the end and you need to go and take this step and that step and this step and that step to go and work yourself back up to the courage to do things without feeling existential dread or disinterest. Listen, burnout is fine. Burnout can exist, but never be bored. When it comes to creativity or anyone in the creative scene, burnout can exist, but never be bored. Never be bored of what it is you want to do, because I think boredom is on the same category as disalignment. And if you're bored of something that you were always meant to do, that you feel like in your heart was something that you were called to do, if you're finding yourself bored, then it means you're doing it wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not what you're meant to do, because I think I mistook that and I thought, well, is this for me? It just means you're doing it wrong. And I'm speaking specifically about creative or any sort of external endeavors that you've been thinking of for so many years, months, weeks, days, hours, something that's really been on your mind and heart, a business, a passion project, whatever it is. Burnout exists, but never be bored. Burnout exists, but never be bored. If you're bored, switch it up. If you're bored, make plans, change trajectory, but never, ever be bored, because it means you're doing it wrong. Burnout is just a natural human experience where when you do something repetitively, or rather when you're just doing anything, period, that requires any sort of energy, not just physical energy, but mental, emotional, spiritual energy, when you're doing anything that drains that, your sources are going to diminish at some point, but they will replenish. They will be fine. They'll go back to normal, but they will never go back to the level that they are supposed to be if you're doing something out of a place of complete disinterest. Because what is the point? Like, if your idea or if your project is falling into the category of I don't want to, but I have to, it means you're doing it wrong. Now, Listen, I use the I don't want to, but I have to. I use that quote all the time. I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, but I've said it on my TikTok, and I say it in my real life when I'm talking about working out, when I'm talking about study, when I'm talking about things that I really genuinely have to do to survive and live like a physically healthy life. At the end of the day, living in this society, it comes with sacrificial aspects. You're gonna have to work out if you want to have good bone density that takes you into your old age. Sometimes you're gonna have to work that 9 to 5 for some portion of your life in order to build up a substantial pension that will take you into old age. Those are things where you can apply I don't want to, but I have to. But when you look beyond that and you look at things that actually feed your soul, where technically you could live without them, but you would just feel a bit spiritually and emotionally and creatively empty. When it comes to those things, those are the things where you have taken so much strength and bravery to even branch out and do those things in the first place. When everything else around you points away from it, something is drawing you towards it. And you really want to sit here and say that you're bored? You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. The ethos maybe isn't correct. Maybe your work hours, your work-life distribution might not be correct. Maybe you've got the wrong niche if that's the thing that you do. Maybe you've got the wrong niche. Maybe you've got the wrong audience. Maybe you've got the wrong friends and supporters around you. Maybe you need to open your Bible and get spiritual guidance. Maybe you need to meditate and get spiritual guidance. Sometimes these things are beyond the scope of human understanding. And so we can't sit here and bug ourselves down and break ourselves down when it doesn't work out right the first time. And that's what I had to tell myself with this podcast. So busy dwelling on the future when that is not in my hands. All I have is right now. I've actually been, hold on, this is not prepared, but I've been reading this book. And I've also been reading the Bible. I've been reading the two, hand in hand. And anyone who knows me in person is probably going to be like, Keziah, what the actual hell? Because for a lot of my life, I actually was agnostic. But sometimes things are beyond our own understanding. And whether or not you come to some sort of spiritual conclusion of what exists and what doesn't, it doesn't always make you actually feel happy inside. You don't feel satisfied by that answer, and so you just need to look for more. Everyone knows me as someone who's very, very inquisitive. I don't really take one sentence for an answer. I need more and more and more and more. And sometimes I can read enough of PubMed. I read enough things on Google. I watch enough of the news and I listen to enough of the radio and I watch enough TikToks, and it's still not enough. And I think also that is where I found it very difficult to come up with certain podcast episodes, because I wasn't able to come at it with real introspective thoughts, because I did not have enough understanding of the concepts that I was trying to deliver. And that's why I don't want to be a self-help podcast, because I don't know all that. I don't know. But I will say I've been reading this. Back to the point. I've been reading this. And one of the things that it mentions is literally called The Power of Now. And that title, I've had this book since 2022, guys. I bought this book a long time ago. But spiritually, something was telling me that read it when you're ready. Read it when you're ready. And I was not ready. I was questioning a lot. I was hurt a lot spiritually. I was really, really hurt. And I think it got to a point where, okay, I've hurt the hurt. I've cried the tears. I've asked God, why this? Why has that happened to me? Why do good things happen to bad people and vice versa? Blah, 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 blah. And then I said, no, I need more. I need more than that. Because I find myself lamenting so much on the past, on who hurt me, how they hurt me, when they hurt me, why I don't deserve to be hurt. And then I'll be thinking of the future. What if they hurt me again? What if this happens? What if that happens? And again, it's leaked into my podcast where I'm like, what if I get to a point again after rebranding my podcast and I still get bored? Guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. The future is not in your hands. Not like that, okay? Yes, they say the future is in your hands. Like, if you work hard now, you'll reap the rewards later. But the intricacies and the details concerning our future, we do not know. So why do we use our energy and our power trying to visualize what isn't there? Why do we use our energy, our grief, our anxiety, our stress to lament on the past and bring that pain into the present when realistically all we have is right now. All we have is now. The vision and a new plan and a new light and a new wave of encouragement that coming from goodness knows where. Could be up there, could be in the room right now. I don't know. But all I know is that something pulled me to pull out this microphone today, and it wasn't coming from the past. It wasn't coming from the future. It's coming from what exists right now. And so here I am. Here I am. And here you are, listening to me right now. What are you going to do with your now? I know you got shit to do. I know you got plans. What are you going to do right now? Don't answer. I'm gonna this, and then in the future, this thing that I'm doing right now is gonna earn me this amount of money. What are you doing right now to make you feel satisfied? Right now. Right now. Don't be delusional about it. Don't say, oh my God, I'm gonna eat some popcorn because it's gonna make me feel really happy. No, I mean in terms of feeding your soul. What are you doing right now? Your plan from the past did not work. You're in the present now and you feel boredom. You feel dissatisfaction, you feel like you need to give up. Let's just pretend that you listened to my episode 1 and you felt inspired by that and you decided to partake in your own passion project. And we're both here now looking at each other. I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, looking at you, looking at me. And we're both like, damn, that plan that we made isn't where we expected it to be at this point in time. That's okay. That's life. We can only do so much with what we have right now. The human mind can only do so much, but it can do a lot if we try. In fact, this is why I think there's something so powerful about the term breaking the mold when it comes to someone who breaks out of the norm and makes their own path, the path less traveled by or whatever. They call it breaking the mold. I think there's something so beautiful about that, because breaking out of that status quo is very difficult for us in this society that we live in, because we're mostly perceived by the actions that we take rather than the spiritual innate beings that we are. It's very hard for people to see us further than surface level, especially when they've not known us for our whole lives. Heck, someone could carry you from conception to birth and still not know you like that. They could still not know the ins and outs of your spiritual intricacies. And so the way you perceive yourself and the way you perceive your dreams will come across completely different to society. For example, someone who says that they really like to learn will get really good grades because everyone's been saying, keep up the good work, you're so smart, you're so great. And soon the conversations that you start having with that person will shift in a direction of how you perceive them. So even me, I'm guilty of this when I'm chatting with my classmates or when I'm seeing my friends, people that I don't see very often but I know are really smart. I'll be like, how's uni? How's that exam going? How's study going? How's this going? Obviously, I spoke about this on my TikTok before, but that can be very draining for a person because it's like you're projecting your perception of myself on me. And so it's very exhausting to maintain this perception when it is not truly who I am. You correlate someone who loves to learn with someone who loves to study. Those two things are mutually exclusive. They are not the same thing. Two things can be true at the same time, yes, but two things seeming similar may not actually be similar at all. And so you live your life and you find yourself in this high-paying job and everyone's congratulating you, giving you a pat on the back, but you're academically burnt out. In terms of your work, you're stressed, you're not happy. And so you move into a new career. Let's just say you end up like those alcohol awareness groups. You end up being like a tutor for one of those, I guess. That's still you loving to learn. You're learning about other people. You're giving them advice. You're still being an educator with the knowledge that you've built, and you're building valuable experiences. But because that's not in line with what the status quo says, then it means that you're doing something wrong. The support that you once got from people when you were doing what they expected you to do starts to go away, because it's like, oh wait, what are you doing? I do not perceive you doing this. Therefore, because I don't understand, then it must be wrong. You must be out of your mind. Weren't you going to go to the moon? I thought you were going to cure cancer. What are you doing with your life? Meanwhile, you're the happiest you've ever been. That's breaking the mold. Stepping out of the perceptions and the generalizations that are made by the public in order to create categories for people to reside in. And Of course, there's always going to be people that fit within the status quo. But like I said just a few seconds ago, two things can be true at the same time. You don't have to be one person. You don't have to just be your 9 to 5. You can be a 9 to 5 and a brilliant ass painter, and you happen to be making more money from painting, and maybe someday you decide to quit your job and go and do painting. And then people are going to look at you and be like, what? Why would you do that? What about job security? What about pension? What about this and this and this and this? What about, wow, that's a bit intense. And then you can decide to go back to that job. You can do both. You can do one. You can do more. You can add a job. You can get another form of income. You can play another instrument. You can do whatever it is that you want in this life. But we're not really talking about that right now. But all I'm saying is that when people start to, talk to you about what are this generalizations and what categories you're supposed to fit in and what archetypes we're supposed to belong to, that can mess with your mind. And when you start to identify with your mind too much, like this book says, when you start thinking that you are your mind and you become your mind, then you will never ever be free. You will never be happy. The moment you step out of your mind, you step out of the void that is the status quo, and you look at it from the outside in, you can better analyze what applies to you and what doesn't. I can sit here and tell you that I would love to do this podcast for the rest of my life as my 9 to 5, but that would not even be remotely true. I still want to work in the field that I'm studying my master's in. I find data analytics difficult, new, an absolute nightmare sometimes, but I still find it interesting. Anyone who knows me, I worked really, really hard in my final year to get my grade up and get into this degree. So best believe I am going to use it. I don't know how long for, but I am going to use it. And that doesn't make me any less of a podcaster and any less of a creative. And the same thing should apply to the things that you do in your life. You're more than what you just bring to the table. You're more than what people perceive you as. You are more than your mind, because your mind is not you. Your mind is a compilation of all of the experiences that you've developed from your past, and it is also a way of visualizing the future. But if you are too accustomed to the way that your mind perceives this world, then you will be too stuck looking at the past and looking at the future when the present is sitting right there, malleable, flexible, with all of the opportunities that you could possibly take, and you're not making use of it. Time is going to pass anyway. So what are you going to do with the time that you do have possession of in this very second right now? Because even though breaking the mold is very difficult, I mean, it's literally like trying to break a rock with your bare hands. But the good thing about it is that even though it's difficult, it is so impressive when it's finally done. All those little chips of rocks can be reformulated into any shape you see fit for your life in this moment. I think this mindset of, do things that your future self will do and channel your future self in the way that you live your life now. I mean, that's all la-di-da, and it's all well and good and it's all fine and dandy, but we don't know her like that. Future me? Who's that? Who's that? We don't know our future, and we will never probably fully understand our past, especially our trauma, because sometimes things are beyond human understanding. Life is so nasty and so rude that things happen and we just cannot seem to understand why. People die, people get sick, people are mean to us, we lose opportunities that we most definitely deserve. We don't know why some people hate us before even meeting us. We don't understand those things, but you can't be bringing that pain into the present, because then you're going to change your perception of everyone who's around you right now. The people who are standing right in front of you, they might not hate you like those people in the past did. The people who you're going to meet in your future are also not your concern right now, because if you're not doing the work right now in the present within things that you can control, you'll never be ready for that future. So what are you doing now? I've asked that question how many times, but I hope it's sinking in. What are you doing now? Guys, I kid you not, my storage literally went storage full and everything just went silent. For the last goodness knows how long. So let me wrap up. I was saying, what are you doing with now? Like, it's a genuine question and I still want to ask it because I didn't get to finish asking it and you didn't get to think of your answer. So I hope you come up with your answer while I figure out mine. I feel like my purpose is just to exist on here. Just exist. Whoever wants to stay will stay. And if you stay, I guarantee you're gonna have a good old time. I can tell you that for free. And honestly, I'm so excited to show you guys what I have in store. Like, I'm not just talking vlog style content. I want to tell you guys what books I'm reading, something that I saw on TikTok. We're gonna drop the gems, we're gonna laugh about everything, we're gonna talk about absolutely nothing, everything in between. Because when I'm doing things that feed my spirit, like I said earlier, you're gonna see it. It's very hard for me to hide what I'm feeling, so I'm excited to share all that in the most authentic, genuine way that I possibly can. I just want you guys to really understand that this is something that I love doing, and I wouldn't have come back if my heart didn't lead me here. And I'm not going anywhere else. I mean, unless I need another break, because exams are in March, so not too much, but trust me, I'm not going away anytime soon. So like I said, stay tuned. And don't mind me, I'm still eyeing that computer. I'm like paranoid now. So you know what? I'm gonna end the podcast here. I think that's a nice sweet note to end it on. Thank you guys once again for supporting so hard in 2024, and we're only just gonna come back bigger, better, badder, and more exciting in 2025. Thank you so much guys for listening to episode 6 of the Black Sheep podcast. I've been your host Keziah, and I'll catch you in the next one in a bit.